in the chat box. There you go. Perfect. Just like what Ian did. He put listing presentations and closing sellers. I love that. That we definitely will get kicked off with that. And guys, please do the same thing. If there's something on your mind, maybe some objections you've been having, some issues, some challenges, some things you want to strategize around and get some of our collective knowledge on, put those in the chat there, guys. We're going to be here for about 55 minutes, so we need some topics that we can talk about. So cool. We got new construction, how to approach work with the builders. Okay, good stuff. Yep. How to initially reach out to. Okay. Hey, Linda, just so you know, this is the sales call. So Tuesdays is when we talk about that. So what we'll do today is all real estate sales. So if you got anything on that, we'll go ahead and cover that. So we got 2 topics so far. Keep putting them in there, guys, because we're going to need a few more as we go. So if you're thinking as we're going through this, then certainly put it in the chat box. So Ian, we'll start with yours, man. I like that one actually to get kicked off with. Curtis, what do you think? Listing presentations and closing buyer or closing sellers.
Yeah, I love it. I think that sounds great. So I've got that on the list. We have new construction coming next. I think that's a great topic to cover as well. And then we had one pending topic from last week is a little bit general, but we were just starting to get into database kind of strategy, architecture setup, just a little bit about database. And then Tyler's just dropped luxury listings in as well and luxury buyers. So I think that's a good set of topics. What I'll do, Kyle, while you kick off, general thoughts on listing presentations, closing sellers, we'll get some chime in from Ian. I'm going to go back to some of our original notes or the last time we did listing presentations and sellers and just pull some nuggets out as well. So I'll be ready for that if you want to kick us off with that topic.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, with listing presentations, I mean, my philosophy has always, been a little bit more of the keep it simple kind of strategy. I mean, I do go in with, as Curtis knows, he's probably seen a copy of my seller book that I've prepared, and I'm happy to share that with you guys. I had this thing made probably, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 years ago or so. And it's a really nice book. It explains, who I am. It's not my listing presentation, just so you guys know. This is like something that you would give out as like marketing material. So I have this that I bring with me, and it kind of explains who I am. It explains, my listing process. It talks about the advantages of using me. It talks about how I price out homes. It has like a little thing in the back that has a vendor list of all of the trades in our area that, as people are trying to get their houses ready, they might want to use that vendor list. I'll tell you guys, that book is gold. Like, people love to get that book, especially the vendor list at the back. I find is the most helpful. So that's something maybe y'all, can take away from this as just a value add is I'll show you what mine looks like. And then if you want to, recreate something similar, with your own vendor list and your own, kind of, marketing, then that would be great. But I hand out that book always. And it doesn't matter, guys, if this is someone that I'm going in that sphere of influence or referral, or if this is something that's like a random, call, sign lead that I don't know. I do my listing presentation pretty much the same way. I go in, I don't start just walking around the house first. I always try and sit down with the person, at the dinner table or at their living room, couches, something like that, and just kind of get to know about them a lot. Like, I ask a lot of questions up front. That's always my process. And those questions, start out very general, like, who are they? Like, what do they do? What do they work? How long they've been in San Antonio for, building rapport. And then they start to, focus around like their goals, right? What do they want to do? Why are they looking to sell? Are they looking to move for a certain reason? Of course, you start figuring all that stuff out. And then you want to determine what their experience level is with selling homes. So I always kind of find out, like, have they ever sold a house before? What was their experience the first time they sold the house, if they've already done that? So you start just asking all of these questions to really get to, figure out about them. And I do all of this before I talk really anything about myself. I don't go in there trying to, toot my own horn or tell them anything about my prior experience. And quite honestly, guys, if you don't have prior experience, that doesn't matter. I mean, really, like, when I touch on that stuff, it's very minimal. If you focus on the other person across the room, that seller, and you ask them all the questions, I think that's going to go a long, long way. And just building the rapport. So, start with asking a ton of questions. I kind of named a few to get you started, but then it's just like anything, those will lead to other questions. And the more you can dig deeper and deeper, and really kind of, sit there asking questions for 10, 15, 20 minutes maybe, the better you'll be. And then what I do is, and you want to take control. I think, most sellers want to see you lead the charge, right? And so it's like, I don't have like a script or anything like that I always go through. I just kind of have a process, right? So I walk in, I've got my material. I haven't handed them anything like material wise yet. I've just got them in my bag. I do bring my laptop with me, and I'll kind of get into that here in a little bit when we talk CMAs. But, I basically go in just asking questions. After that's done, then I say, hey, you know what, tell you what, before we get into the numbers and really going into all that stuff, I really want to take a look at your guys' home. Would you mind giving me a tour? And on the tour, I'd like you to point out things that, you guys have done since you've moved in, things that still might need a little bit of work, or things that you were, planning to do if you stayed here longer. Because I want them to like point out that their house isn't perfect, right? Like, try and get a couple things that they can say, because you might need to lean on that later, when it comes to the pricing discussion. And so, when you walk through the house, just again, be very observant, like even if they're walking kind of quick, try and walk slower and be looking up at the ceilings, like, just like make sure you're really looking at it really good. And then once you're done with that, then say, okay, great, let's go sit back down real quick, and make sure you look at the outside of the house too. Don't just walk the inside, walk around the whole outside of the house before you sit down at the table. And so, but definitely once you're done with that and you've done your whole final kind of walk around the house, the inside, the outside, I go sit back down at the table. I bring out my laptop. I bring out my marketing materials. And then I basically start, I hand them my seller book, which kind of explains a little bit who I am. I don't spend very long, kind of explaining it. I give that to them so they can kind of read it later. It sits with them, they keep it, but I do just kind of open it up and say, hey, here's, a little bit about me. Here's a little bit about my process. Here's the marketing that I do. It lists out all the different things that I do. I talk about the vendor list, and that's pretty much it. I give that to them and I say, all right, well, hey, are you guys, ready to kind of, talk numbers and talk strategy about, what we would do to get your home sold? And so that's kind of how I then introduce like the getting into the CMA part of it. And so they say, yeah, let's do it. They're very excited. So at first I do, again, start with questions. I don't just go in and say, hey, your house is worth $250,000. I like to ask them and say, hey, so tell me, what do you think that, your home is worth? I know that, there's a lot of tools out there today and you've probably seen some numbers. Just curious, just so we kind of have a starting point, like what are your goals? What are you thinking? What do you think that it's worth? And, sometimes some sellers are trying to, it depends on, again, your rapport, your relationship with them. They might want to hold those cards close to their vest. They might say, oh, I think it's, 235, but, we don't really know. That's why we have you here. Like, some people are more open than others, and you just have to kind of roll with it. If you can't, I might take a second shot at it. Usually if they don't tell me right out front, I'll just say, well, okay, well, what do you need to sell it for? What are you wanting to sell it for? I really want them to give me a number first. And so, I'll take two shots at it. If they're insistent that they're like not going to give me a number at all, then I'll just move on and I'll say, okay, well, hey, no worries. I know that's why I'm here. So let's go ahead and get into the numbers. But you kind of want to know like where their mind's at. That way you can tailor your CMA and your numbers talk around, whether it's going to be higher or lower, and you're going to be pulling in more things. Like if they're too high, you're going to be trying to, on your CMA, pull in things that are going to bring them back to reality. Or if they're very low, that's usually a good conversation. You're going to be doing things that are going to be making them pretty happy. And so anyway, so then you get into the numbers. I always bring my laptop with me because I like to show them stuff in real time. So I'll ask them like, hey, is it okay if I, connect your Wi-Fi? And most of the time they say, yeah, oh yeah, that's fine. If they don't know their password or something really easily or offhand, I just connect to my hotspot. So make sure you guys, have access and ability to do that. One thing I will say is, be prepared. That's the one thing is like, if you don't have, like something ready to go, you also want to have like a paper deal. Like I'll bring a printed net sheet and and just a printout of the MLS, like a CMA summary of the MLS listings that show the available and the solds. I don't like to go over that though right away. I use that as like a backup plan, and I use it in the end to give them something that they can hold on to. But I don't go over that first. I go over my computer first because I like to show them live stuff. I like to pull up actual houses, run through all the pictures of those houses. for a couple of reasons. I mean, it can explain to them like what their house needs to look like to sell. If I'm looking at homes and they're all, the photos look like it's a model home, they're staged and they're looking good, I kind of use that as a guide and say, look guys, here's, a home that sold, in 14 days, but look at how it looks like. We'll talk about the price, but just look at, how all these photos look, and how the home is well taken care of, everything is clean. And so I think it's helpful for people to see that. When I worked in new home sales, it was always nice because when I worked in the model home, I could always say, hey, look, just like you're seeing this model right now, that's how your house needs to look so you can sell it and buy one of these model houses. But now, you're kind of having to show them these pictures so they can kind of get an idea. But then you go into the numbers and you just, again, kind of talk about.
Hey, Kyle, before you go to numbers, I just want to highlight something real quick, just because we say this all the time, and I think this is really important for everybody to practice and get really good at. We always say facts tell and stories sell, right? So the value, one of the main values, in my opinion, of going through that live CMA process and literally showing them all of the other listings that have sold or not sold is the ability to sort of weave a story, right? You don't know the story perfectly, right? But you see a house that looks plain or below average, that was priced too high, and it sat on the market for 125 days and then finally sold for 10K below list. You can sort of weave a story as you click through that history on that property, right? And you're like, look, this house got listed, pictures aren't great, they overpriced it, it sat for 130 days, and you go through, and then you get to the the other example of this house was staged perfectly, it was presented well, it was photographed great, got a contract in 7 days above asking price. You're starting to create for yourself this ability to go back to a relatable story when you propose a price and you have a days on market story and you have a history of no price changes. You've created this story in the seller's minds, and they all want that story. They all want to sell for the most amount of money in the shortest amount of time, and you can kind of come back to that when you've been able to weave that story, as opposed to just, like you said, handing them a CMA summary and saying, here's all the numbers. So I just think it's important to recognize what you're doing while you're showing them. You're not just highlighting the facts, you're literally weaving a story that's going to help them go with the story you want, which is the right price and the right presentation of the product.
Hey guys, let me share this with you real quick. Back to what I was talking about a minute ago, and it ties into what exactly you just said, Curtis, was the property that I'm actually closing on today. It was one of our personal investment properties. It was an $800,000 house. We paid a professional stager. I did some amazing photos, high-res photos, and then I actually took those photos and I had further editing done to the photos. I had a lead come through yesterday from the Zillow listing, and it was a consumer that had a house close to where my property was. And she was like, I was looking through all these listings and I came across yours, and I'm just absolutely stunned and fascinated because the photos are incredible. The staging is amazing. I have a listing that's about to expire. Would you mind meeting me at the house? Because we're going to switch brokers after this went. So it was just from all that effort that I put up on the front end, I had got a lead from, because when you flip through all the different properties from the first image to the staging to everything. So that's kind of why I wanted to start the topic off today. But I've also increased my marketing and my funnels for listings. So this is something that's, that I'm going to be working on and focusing on heavily. So.
Well,
love it.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, real quick too, guys. And I think because Curtis and Ian actually kind of brought up a good point that I think is extremely important that we didn't even touch on. But, really one of the things that I think is so important when it comes to listings is how much you prepare before the listing presentation even begins. And we didn't even talk about that. We've talked about it on other calls, I know, that we have. But when I'm going in there, like I'm talking about like, oh, you need to, pull up your laptop and go over the CMA with them. But don't get me wrong, like this better not be the first time that you're looking at those comps. Like when you have it pulled up in front of that seller, like you better know those comps before you go in there. Like, like I know them inside and out. Like I know what story I'm going to weave when they tell me what that number is in their head. And I've already walked their home. Like I've already got it kind of figured out. Well, I'm going to pull up this comp. I got to show them this. I even know, like I always go in there. I go in there with the tax appraisal value in my head. I go in there with RPR value in my head. I go in there with Zestimate in my head, even though I'm not a big Zestimate fan or whatever, because like sometimes people pull that stuff up. Sometimes they use those different things. You need to know what you're dealing with when you go into that situation, and then what you can lean on you know, when the time comes around that you're going to need to use that in your story. So yeah, being prepared up in the front end of it is extremely important. And one thing that I will say, guys, like, you know, getting your first listing, you know, of course, like I'm sure it's intimidating and all that, but when you get it, here would be my suggestion and my tip on that. Just like Ian said, go over the top, guys. Go over the top on that first one. Or if you've done a bunch, but maybe you've never done this, then whatever the next one you get is, go over the top on it. Get professional video, get professional pictures. Like, you need something, because whenever I go in mine, I pull up my laptop, I pull up one of my recent listings, and I take the video that I did on it. I show them on Zillow what my photos look like compared to the others. And one of the cool things, I don't know if you guys know this or not yet, but like, say if you just list your professional, you know, HD high resolution pictures in the MLS. I know here in San Antonio, you know, we actually have an HD MLS, like where if, you know, you're a realtor on there, you can see them and they look really crisp and clean. But then when they get syndicated to like Zillow and Realtor.com, they kind of look like crap. They down resolute, you know, they take them and down res them, so that way they're not, you know, as high resolution as what you originally uploaded. And one of the things you can do about that is, then if you go onto the Zillow or Realtor.com, you can do it on both of these sites. You go claim that listing, or if you know you already got your account on Zillow and Realtor.com, you can go in there and actually, you know, once you claim that listing, you can edit the listing, and it'll say all of the data is already syndicated from the MLS feed, but you can go back in and actually still change the pictures. It will store your pictures in there, so you can re-upload your high resolution pictures to Zillow and Realtor.com. And then it's actually going to be a high-res picture on Zillow and Realtor.com. And so when you're actually there sitting with a seller, the most helpful thing you can ever do is show them in real time how much better your stuff looks than even anything else in their neighborhood. And most agents don't know that. So even if they've got HD professional pictures and they put them in the MLS, if you go on Zillow, they're going to look very small, and you'll see a big difference. Like, you can go to, you know, look me up on Zillow, pull up my listings, and you'll see all of them are high res. I've went through, I always change out the pictures and put the high res versions of them. And so when you're like looking at, you know, another house in the neighborhood, even if it's a professional one, it's a small one, and then you click on yours and it takes up the full thing. And they're like, oh, wow, that's, you know, pretty awesome. Like, I never knew that you could do that. Right. Or I never knew that it would look so different. And it's a huge difference. And then you explain what the value of that is. Hey, you know, most homes are bought because people see them online first. You know, you gotta be, you know, 100% on your photos, and just explaining that to the seller, and they're buying in every single time you're showing them that. So again, all that stuff is done in the front end. But if you don't already have a listing, or if you've never had a listing, then whenever your first one is, I don't care if it's $100,000 or $150,000 listing, you're going to lose money on it if you take professional pictures. It's worth it, guys, because that's your portfolio. You're starting that portfolio. And it's worth it, guys, for your future business to invest in it, right? You need some story. In addition to the story of what you're going to sell their house for, you need some story about yourself and what you do and what makes you different. So invest in that up front on one of those, you know, early listings that you get. That way you can start really just leveraging that for future listing appointments. I know Tim Power, I don't know if he's on the call right now, but he just had his first listing, and I was like, dude, you got to go over the top on this. Get drone video, get drone pictures. I mean, it's a nice listing though too, but you know, go over the top on it, because this is your first one, man. Every single listing after this point, you're going to be able to leverage that video and or those pictures or whatever it is, and utilize that for future. So make sure, you know, you're thinking those terms. Even if right off the bat it sounds like it's going to be expensive to spend $600 for a marketing package, you know, to get video and pictures, it will pay itself in dividends down the road when you have those future listings to go to. So anyways, getting back into it, as far as the CMA goes, you know, again, you know, we have to think of it in terms of stories. You know, you want to go through the comps and go through the solds and really explain to them why we only look at the solds primarily. As far as determining their value, that's what I do. I say, hey, look, we use these solds to determine what we, you know, think your home will sell for. Now, that being said, we'll still look at the actives because we want to know what your competition is. But I look in those in terms of hey, we need to be better than those, right? Those are your competition. You don't want to just price your house because of that, because we don't know if those homes are going to sell at that price. Anybody can list their home for anything. We want to look at these solds because this is what they're selling for. And we just want to make sure we're more competitive based on that, what we think your house is going to sell for. We're more competitive than what's on the market currently. So that's kind of how I use those. I don't go into, too much about canceleds and expireds. I know that you can use that as part of your CMA, but mine, again, if I've got enough data there with the solds, the availables, all that good stuff, then I pretty much just stick to that. And then at that point I say, hey, so based on this, I think that, we would have a good chance of selling it for X amount, which, realistically, we should probably list it for, this amount. And the way that I do that, at least with our MLS, it tells us the average list price to sales price ratio for that neighborhood. And if it's 97%, I make a point to tell them, like, hey, look at this, guys. I know a lot of people think like, all the homes sell for above listing price, or all the homes sell for 10% below, or you're going to get a deal on homes. Like, that doesn't really exist. I say, here's what it is. If you look at the numbers, it's 97% or it's 98%. And so I say, we got to keep that in mind when you're pricing your home. If we go too much above 2 to 3% higher than what we think it's going to sell for, it's going to sit on the market most likely, because you'll see San Antonio is a very conservative market. People don't like to, feel like they're lowballing a seller. So you'll just end up sitting there and not getting an offer. And I say, you don't want to run that risk. And at the same point too, we don't want to price it at exactly what its market value is, because, chances are we're probably going to get 2 to 3% less. Maybe not. We might get, full ask or multiple offers or something like that. But let's just put a little bit of a barrier there, but not too much. And most people get that. Like, when you're explaining it to them, they're appreciative of it. They really like what you're telling them. And so if they're like, man, it's, 200,000, and it's, 98% list price, then I say, look, we can probably go in at, 203,900 or something like that, right? Let's just, or if you want to be real competitive, we just go right in at 200,000, or, I kind of come up with some story about why I think that it should be that way. But based on the average list price to sales price, and based on, sold comps and available comps. And of course, we explain days on market as well. I don't use that to really price out stuff, but I just use that to explain to them, like, hey, and this is how long you should expect that it could take. And then it also, in our MLS, shows how much seller contributions are average. And so I explain to them what seller contributions are, because it's way easier to explain that up front to somebody than it is to explain it when you're getting an offer. A lot of times people think like sellers, they think like seller contributions are something crazy, that like it's going to be money out of their pocket, or they're going to have to give the buyers cash, or I don't know. They just get these weird thoughts in their head. And when realistically, you just explain to them like, hey, that's just your net number, right? If it's 205 and they want 5,000 closing costs, it's like they're offering you 200,000. Basically, and you kind of explain that up front. So when you're showing them the comps, make sure that you're explaining both sides to that story, right? Like if, home sells for 186, but it had, $4,500 in closing costs, I say, look, it really actually sold for about 181,500, just so that way people aren't thinking like, oh, these homes sold for 186, because it really didn't. So make sure you're using those in your story as well, because in some price points, you're going to see a lot more seller contribution as an average. As you get higher price points, sometimes it's less, but that's not always the case. So you just want to make sure, though, that you're cognizant of that, and you're being aware of seller contributions in that story that you're presenting. And so then at that point, of course, you want to make sure, I always bring my listing agreements with me. They're basically printed out. All they got to do is, hand initial, hand sign. And once I've gotten, some established price, right, I say, hey, okay, so, you think that 204,900 is a good price to go in at? Yeah, that'd be great. And I was like, all right, cool. So we're going to probably sell it for, anywhere from about 195 to 200. We'll list it at 204,900. I say, based on the net sheet, and then I'll do a net sheet on my computer. I use Independence Titles net sheet. If you don't have a net sheet where you can pull up online, where it's like a calculator, make sure to make that a part of your homework, where you can have that bookmarked. I use one. It might be specific to Texas, but get with somebody in your area to find out where you can easily pull up a net sheet. And based on that net sheet, I just pop in the values, right? Like, this is the commission, this is the price, these are the closing date, this is the house's taxes. It'll prorate taxes out of that net sheet for me automatically. It takes out HOA dues and kind of prorates those. And I say, look, so based on this story, if we sold it at the average price, let's say we sold it at 200. I know we're listing it at 2049, but I like to be conservative. Let's say we sold it at 200. I'll put that number in there. And then we basically get a net number. And I say, look, based on you paying off your mortgage and everything out the door, you're looking at clearing $86,000. Now, keep in mind, if we get higher than 200,000, it could be a little higher than that. If we get a little less than 200,000, it could be a little less than that. That's just kind of the roundabout average that I think it'll be at. Are you comfortable? Is this what you were expecting when it came time? And if you get their acknowledgement around that, then again, you're just looking to try and get all these mini closes along the way, right? So you get the mini close on the house, the sale price, you get the mini close on the net sheet, and then you ask them, you say, based on what you've seen as far as real estate agents and people that are going to be able to sell your house, do you feel comfortable with myself and with moving forward with having me list and sell your home? Again, if they say yes, it's another mini close. If not, it's an objection. You trying to figure out like what it is, and sometimes people aren't ready to commit right away. You want to try and get through that, right? Like, well, what's holding you back? Is there something that we need to wait on? And the one thing is, most of the time what I find is people are just, they're not ready to list it. So they think that like by signing this paper that you're going to list it tomorrow. Say, look, no, this is just saying that, hey, I'm going to be your agent. We don't have to list it for a month. We don't have to list it for, 6 weeks, whatever it is. But what this is doing is saying, you're now my client. I can answer any questions you have. We've got complete confidentiality, that, I've got your best interest at heart. So I make it about them, right? Like how it's going to advantage them. And I say, look, even if we don't list it for the next 6 weeks or whatever, you're going to be able to call me whenever you need, because you're already my client, and I'll give you, my honest advice. I can come back out here and do another follow-up if you need me to. But I really want to get them to sign that piece of paper while I'm there, right? Get that listing agreement signed. And so anyways, that's my strategy. I get the listing agreement signed and I say, perfect. And then we set up a plan, say, look, how long based on, these items. Oh, that's the one thing I didn't cover is, once we've kind of done that, I'll say, all right, well, cool. Well, here's, based on what I think, my suggestions for your house. And I'll kind of run through all the things that we need to do. So sometimes we'll get up and walk again through it. And just look at it again and start kind of writing down a little bit of a list of all the things that they need to still get done, which is the majority of the cases. They, need to either do some decluttering or paint some stuff or clean. But I'm, really just kind of going through it, getting that list. And I say, how long do you think it'll take you to do all that? Oh, 2 weeks. Okay, perfect. So, I need to get my photographer out here. Can we set it up for Wednesday, the 24th? And they're like, yeah, that would be great. I say, okay, perfect. Well, if anything changes between now and then, let me know for sure. But otherwise, I'm going to schedule my photographer for that day. It'll take about an hour. And I just explain the process. And then I say, look, I like to get my pictures done either on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, because that way I can get them back by Thursday. We can get it listed that Thursday or Friday at the latest, so we can hit that weekend. I don't like to take pictures on a Thursday or a Friday. Just because then I won't get the pictures back and we'll already miss the weekend. I was like, ideally, we need to get this thing listed up by Thursday. That way we can have the full weekend to get people to look at it. Otherwise, we're just wasting days on market. And it's all those like little touches that you say that make you be the expert that might differentiate you from just, some random agent that came in that's not explaining this or, thinking through it all the way. That's going to make them comfortable with you and why they should use you. So anyways, I think that kind of sums up, at least gets this thing started. Curtis, I'm going to kick it back to you.
Yeah, man.
Ian, if I didn't answer some part of your question, yeah.
No, that's great. It's great to kind of hear your thoughts, because you're thinking through what you do, and you guys sell a lot of real estate. You're an icon agent. You've done very, very well in your career. So it's just all golden nuggets, man. I appreciate it. I saw Russ put a question in. Let's say you have some stale listings and the houses aren't moving. What are you doing to move those properties, Kyle?
All right, say that. Hold on, wait. What would you do if you have a few houses that are not selling? Oh yeah, perfect. So Russ, I mean, that's definitely a good one. I mean, it's a little different each time. Usually it's not my marketing. I will say that, causing it. Most of the time it's either price or sometimes if the house is not the way it should be. Like if I have actually got a listing right now that, we're not priced too far off. We're probably a little high, maybe 5-10 grand at the most. But it's got some really like kind of funny, like paint stuff going on in it, like dark colors. And I wanted him to do it up front, but I was a little bit lenient because he had a lot of other stuff to do as well. But now at this point, it's kind of sat there for, I mean, it's only been listed for probably 3 weeks, but even still, that's a long time in my market. And for me, I don't like houses to sit that long. And so one thing we had to go back to is I have to have that conversation about, hey, here's the deal. We've been getting a lot of feedback so far, that, X, Y, or Z, the paint is whatever. And what you might have to do, like some listings, like I actually talked to Tim the other day, and it's like, you might not even get any showings right away, right? Like you had no showings. And then so you're like, man, well, what's my story going to be when I go back to that seller? Well, what you might need to do then is shop that listing around to agents, like fellow agents of yours, and say, hey, can you give me some feedback on this? Like, you don't need to go out and see it, but just like look at the pictures. Like, we haven't really any showings. I'm curious, what your thoughts would be. And like, maybe if they'll tell you something like, oh, the paint's kind of weird on this or whatever, now you can go back to that seller and not be lying to them, but tell them like, hey, I had 3 agents that said the same thing. Like, this paint really does, guys, it does need to be changed out. I'm pretty confident if we just made this one extra change and we, added in like a little bit of like a price drop, maybe $1,000, $2,000, doesn't need to be the full 5 or 10 grand. Just so that way it gets price change status, which if you guys don't know, it's a pretty good tactic to use, is to make sure that you're changing the price, at least, 2 weeks, every 2 weeks. I like to do it just because it bumps it up to the top on all of the like Zillow and realtor.com stuff. So we do that.
Will you talk through that a second? Go back, Kyle. That's a nugget that I didn't realize.
Yeah. So like Zillow, realtor.com, the 2 things you can do on there to bump your listing back up to kind of like the top of the search results, like if they filter out properties, is you can hold an open house, because Zillow and realtor.com like actually pumps up the homes that have open houses up to the top. Or you can do a price change on it, because anytime you change the price on it, it gets moved up to the top as well. So like, that's what I would do, is one of those 2 things or both, along with doing what that needs to happen for that listing from the feedback that you're getting. So like if it's paint, if it's carpet, if it's, whatever it might be, I think you have to go to it. And so a lot of times too, what I'll get is sellers will want to start with, well, hey, what if we give like a concession, like we give them the ability to take, $3,000 off the, in seller concessions to pay for carpet or pay for paint. And sometimes I'll give in and say, yeah, that's fine. I really don't like to, but if I have to, I'll say, yeah, that's fine. We'll do that or whatever. That usually ends up biting me in the butt. And that's usually the thing that does need to happen for them to get that house sold. So then you have to go back to them and say, all right, guys, hey, we tried it this way. It didn't work. I would recommend that, we change out the carpet, we change out the paint, we do whatever it is that needs to be done that's not making it sell. Or if the price is just high, I mean, hopefully that's not too much of the case, because if you go in with a good CMA, it shouldn't be too hard. Now, sometimes you get into those higher price points and it's hard to really know what the price should be, but any kind of like cookie cutter neighborhood, you shouldn't be off too much. But if you are, and you really got to make that drop, significant to get some people interested in it, then you have to have that conversation with them. And if it's a little too much for them to take right away, try and figure out, okay, well, here's what we're going to do in the next, 30 days. We're going to take a price drop in, right now, and then in 2 weeks, and then 30 days, and kind of break it up into 3. But that way you can be getting, that price change status often. So I don't know. So it's basically one of those 2 things, in my opinion. It's usually either price, or it's, something wrong with the house that needs to be done. And the marketing, if you don't have professional pictures, and that's why it is, then go get professional pictures. I mean, that should be step number 1, or professional marketing. There's things too that you can do to force more eyeballs on it. I mean, that's like probably a whole nother discussion, a whole nother topic we could have about like Facebook ads and how to target, certain people, and what you should put in your Facebook ad to get people to look at that property. But you can pay for ads and, get more people to look at it as well. Which will kind of bump up the showings as well. So I'll do that definitely on my higher end listings. Usually my low end listings, I mean, they're sold in like the first weekend or the second weekend. So I don't even spend time, doing that. It's just not worth it. But if you have a house that's tricky, it's higher priced, it's maybe a little overpriced, or maybe it's just, a unique situation, maybe it would be beneficial to take out an advertisement, target people in the area that you would identify that would want to buy that home. And that all comes along with like targeting and what people are moving up from. There's all sorts of things you can do. I mean, Facebook's made it a little bit more restrictive of, you know, what you're allowed to do. You can't target like exact zip codes, but you can still do like a 10-mile radius. You can still target income brackets. So like, you know, if you're selling a, you know, $700,000 home, I mean, you shouldn't be targeting people under that make less than 100 grand, right? Like, I mean, you can do things like that to get your message in front of, you know, the people that need to see it, and get the most bang for your buck on your advertising. But I don't know. So those would be a few of them that I would recommend. Hope that answered your question, Russ.
Hey Kyle, can I so it's 9:40 Central Time. We got a lot going on this listing presentation and closing sellers, but we've got Jason Phipps on the call, guys. If Jason's still here, I'm going to put him on the spot real quick. For anybody who doesn't know Jason Phipps, guys, Jason Phipps is a rock star team leader. Him and his wife run an amazing team out in the Northwest. So it's 7:40 where they sit this morning. But I might get the numbers wrong, but Jason and his team just closed, I believe, 30 plus units in the month of May, and they're prolific listing agents and buyer's agents. So Jason, I'm going to recap here real quick what we've gone through this morning, and I'd love to open it up to you to just jump in any area that you feel like you might be able to contribute. The folks on this call, the theme of our Monday morning mastermind is trying to help every agent on the call get to their next sale, whether they're negotiating, trying to close it, or they're trying to renew, or somewhere in between, trying to get a listing or get a buyer. So we've covered everything this morning, from preparing for listings and steps related to that. We've covered the actual listing presentations and the structure of an appointment. And then right now, what you just heard us covering is, you know, the troubleshooting of stale listings not moving. So just based on your experience and what's on the top of your mind, what could you share with the folks on this Monday morning mastermind here, Jason? Hopefully he's in a place where he can unmute.
Hey, I am muted. We're good. The biggest thing I want to add to Kyle is, let's talk about the paint for a quick minute. So you have a house, pictures are on point, price is right around there, and the only thing you really feel is wrong with it is paint. What I always do, and it's a little different than Kyle, is I just say, look, we don't need to drop the price. We don't need to get it painted. We'll just do a quick allowance, maybe $1,500. And what I'll do with that allowance is I'll say, look, guys, you can pick your own colors, and I'll use that to remarket my listing on social media. So now I'll say something trendy like, buy a house and we'll get it painted for you, or just some kind of fancy headline, and I'll advertise it on Facebook, and that there you'll save your clients probably like $5,000 to $10,000 from price drops, and all you'll do is spend $1,500 on the new paint inside. So try to take the allowance and make it a new marketing piece for social media. So I just want to piggyback off that.
I love that, man. You know what, Jason? I'm going to try that. You watch me on my Lost. I got one on Lost Arrow. I think it's Lost Arrow. It's that's the one with the paint. That's interesting. I'm going to do that. I'm going to see how it works, and I'll let you know.
Yeah, man. I'm telling you, it's really no secret. If your house isn't selling, buyers are so educated, it's always price. If it's something small like a paint, people are just using that as the excuse. The real true reason, it's priced too high. So really your focus should always be lower the price, lower the price, lower the price, and try to do it quick so you're not chasing the market. That's what I educate my agents on. You know, we're not looking to lower it 1,000 this week and then 3,000 next week. We're going to sit down with our seller. We're going to say, look, if we continue to do this, you're going to start chasing the market. You're going to lose more and more buyers because the house is going to sit longer, and they're going to be like, why is the home sitting? Because, you know, buyers are smart, and you're just going to continue this process. So what you want to do is set the expectation up front. If you're sitting down in your listing and the seller is saying, you know, I want to list it for 10,000 more, you don't always have to walk away from that. Say, okay, we can try this. But if we're not getting the activity that I'm looking for in the first week or two, are you prepared to drop it at 10,000? So what I do is I agree. After 2 weeks, I do a $10,000 price drop, and I remarket everything because I'm primarily social media. And by doing that, you're getting people excited again. You know, the listing's not dying. So it's just a way to reinvent your listing a couple weeks in. So I'm always open to overpricing by 5 to 10 and then using my marketing to say, hey, whoa, look it, here it is, 10,000 price drop, come get it today type of thing. So
I love it. Hey, real quick, because I know you are big on social media, Jason. What are some of your quick tips? Like when you're doing an ad, are you doing ads, or are you doing this like organic? I know you got already a pretty organic following, but do you also run ads? And if so, who are you targeting? Like what are some specific categories you're using?
Yeah, I do both. I just do a lot of general boosting now because I have such a big following. But if I'm targeting, really, it's just listing dependent. So if it's a high end, obviously you can still target like top 10% in area code. So I'll do something along those lines. You can do a lot of things with demographics. Likely to move is a big one I use for a lot of my campaigns. Um, and that's on Facebook. There's a little section. I believe it's in, do you know what part it's in, Kyle? Is it in
What's
the
that?
demographics part,
Oh, I
the
don't know that.
likely to move?
Yeah, I just use the search whenever I'm doing my demographics. I put in a little search thing. You can search like likely to move and it'll come up usually. So like in the
Yeah,
suggestions
so
tab.
definitely use that. Likely to
Yep.
move is a big one.
Yeah.
But yeah, it really just depends on the listing on who I target.
Okay. Cool. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, good deal. Well, yeah. All right. What else we got?
Thanks,
Well, I
Jason.
got one more thing, Kyle. Here's the
Yeah.
one thing. Your listing presentation's amazing. It was great. Something I've taught my agents is a lot of times sellers care about three things. What's my commission? What's this going to cost me? How quick are you going to sell it? And how long until we can get it active. What I'll do sometimes is if I've had multiple phone conversations with them, I know they're ready to go, especially when you get to my point where you pretty much know you have the listing before you show up.
Mm-hmm.
You get there, you ask them, besides commission and how we're going to price your home tonight, is there anything else you want to know? And what you do right there is you narrow out the two toughest things and you open the platform for them to ask questions. Most of the time you're going to find those are the only two things they care about, and you can be in and out 30 minutes. Listing signed, ready to go. So that's also, I call it the quick listing presentation.
I love that. Yeah, no, that's huge. And yeah, sometimes, and you know which listings you have when you're going to go in, they're not even interviewing other agents. Like there's really no other options on the table. Yeah, I mean, you can definitely do a shorter presentation. I love those. Those are the best. I think what we were doing is like, or mine just now is more of like, if you got to build value and you got to still sell yourself and all that, like the best ways you can do that. And I think too, I mean, we're talking me and you, Jason, and there's a lot of agents though, they might be brand new. So they got to sell themselves. I mean, you have to kind of, especially in the beginning, early on, if you're competing or something like that, you want to, build as much value. And you can do that, of course, by, trying to build a relationship, answering questions, talking about the process. But yes, most sellers, especially if they've done it once or twice or whatever, already done it before, this whole, hour and a half kind of thing is a little unnecessary. You might not need to do all of those steps that I listed out. It does boil down to what Jason just said. Absolutely.
Right, and that's only if you already know you have it. That's what
Yep.
I'm saying. Save
Yep.
yourself time. But yeah,
Absolutely.
well, thanks for letting me talk, guys.
Cool. Oh, I love it, man.
Thanks,
Thank you for
Jason.
being
That's
here.
huge, man. And I want to highlight, guys, just the value of listening into conversations like this, right? Because if you're a newer agent to the game and you don't have the 15 years of experience or you haven't listed hundreds of homes, you're still hearing from folks who have. And so when you walk in, if you have already talked to that seller and you're feeling good and confident and you take Jason's quick listation approach, for some types of personalities, they're going to respect and appreciate that. And it's going to lend to you so much extra credibility and expertise that you understand the business and the process of listing so well that you walk in and you cut straight to their pains. Like sometimes that's going to be really appreciated, in contrast to that long hour and a half long listing appointment where it gives the husband or the wife time to scrutinize every little thing you say or whether or not you knew what you were talking about or whatever. So there's value to all approaches if you'll just deepen your skill set and your level of understanding of all these different approaches, right? So even if you're not a seasoned professional, but you walk into a presentation, you've had great rapport with them up front and you're like, hey guys, I've got a whole lot we can cover, but I want to jump straight to a few things that all of my sellers always want to know. It's just about how you say it. And that seller is going to say, okay, well, that's exactly what I'm concerned about. How much is it going to cost me? How much is it going to sell for? And how fast is it going to sell? Yeah, I want to talk about all those things, but here's my only questions. And that's it. Like, so you can use these techniques and try them. The only way you're going to get good at them is trying them and practicing all of these different suggestions. So that was great stuff, guys. That was good, thorough listing appointment and closing seller stuff.
Yeah. Hey, real quick, I saw a question in the chat that I just wanted to respond to. It's not a long one, but I've got a $2.4 million waterfront listing. This is from Linda Moore. I was going to reach out to the builder to interview him. Any thoughts? So there's a million different ways you could leverage this and kind of capitalize on this situation. One, you could go, and if he agrees to do the interview, go inside that listing. I'm sure it's a beautiful listing, right? Like, why would you not want to be inside of it when you're doing the interview? And really just, have a great video. Y'all can be sitting at two chairs, have the camera set up. The biggest thing when you're doing that is, you want good audio. If people are going to listen to an interview, you want good audio. So, make sure that you're mic'd up, or you got some kind of good way to record the audio from that. Those little lavalier mics, I love it. If you want to go a little bit more like guerrilla marketing, you can do like just a Facebook Live and go on Be Live. If you've never heard of Be Live, you go download that and do a Be Live interview on Facebook. If you just want to really get some information and get some stuff out there. But whatever it is, it's the same thing, right? You want to use that interview for the long term, like make it evergreen, and try and pull out some nuggets from it. Say if the interview is 30 minutes or 45 minutes, that's good to have that as available. Have it something that you've done, or you can reference back to, or put wherever, just to give you some ability to look like you're super professional. But then also like try and leverage some, like, shorter segments of it. Maybe 30-second long clip or a minute long clip where it shows you and this person interviewing. That's like a real powerful segment of it, something that you guys said that was impactful or whatever. And, utilize that on, a Facebook ad or something like that, right? That you're going to try and go out there and get more developers or more builders, or, you want to kind of repurpose that and make it into a couple different things. So, realistically, if you can do it inside the listing, if you don't know how to do video stuff, you might have to hire a camera person. It would probably be worth it, especially if it's a nice listing like that and you want to start targeting that demographic or that type of a market, new home builders or whatever. I don't think that stuff goes to waste. Any type of video you can do, if you do it right, it's not going to be wasteful. That's the most powerful thing you can do in today's day and age, is video. So pay somebody if you've got to. If you know how to do it, have somebody help you and kind of set up the interview, when you're doing it. But anyways, and then, of course, figure out, like, again, you got to start with who your demographic is. Like, what's the, start with the end in mind. Like, what's the purpose? Why are you doing this interview? Is it just so you can sell that listing? Is it so you can try and target those, that same type of a new builder for future and get more listings from new builders? Like, what is the end goal of it? And then kind of, figure out what questions you need to ask based on it. Or maybe you have two goals, right? And then you just ask a couple different questions. And when you cut it up, you have a thing that goes out to one people if you're trying to sell it and you want to make a little ad around that. And then you can use another part of that interview for, what you want to do for future targeting those builders. So hope that helps.
Hey, Kyle, will you take that thread and kind of keep rolling into new construction just to kind of wrap this thing up? Let's give a 5-minute. And if we need to go deeper and anybody has more questions about new construction, but right now, I don't know the statistics off the top of my head, but I can tell you anecdotally, like, new construction is on fire in our market and a lot of markets across the country because of the competitiveness and the low inventory of listings, right? So if you have a buyer that's looking for something and combine that with the low interest rates right now, like, it's an amazing time to put people in new construction homes. And so just give a quick overview on how to think about construction, maybe how to approach it, and some tips there.
Yeah, well, there's two things that you can do in new construction, in my opinion, right? Like, you can either work with like a big builder and then go out there and try and find the individual sales counselors and buddy up with them and, go out and build a relationship with them. So that way you can get in on the ground floor whenever they have clients that need to sell a home, or maybe they need, a little bit of a, like a help with a lease back or something like that, or buying out their lease. Like if they're already renting and they're trying to buy a new house and they want, $2,000 to buy out their lease so they can get out early. Like, you can get put on the deal sometimes if you've got a relationship with that new home sales agent. So, like, there's one avenue, right? You got sales agents within, the builder community, but then you also can leverage your relationships with, like, the actual builder. Like, one of my best relationships I had was, with one of the builders of Whitestone Homes in San Antonio. And he would call on me whenever he had challenging listings because he knew that my marketing was on point. And, the builders, they'll always try and kind of list it themselves, or most of the time they'll try and list it themselves to save on some costs. They might already have a salesperson sitting out there, so they're going to pay them. They don't want to, necessarily have to hire an agent as well to list it. But most of the times, if they have a tricky listing or something they need to sell quickly, like, that's where you have to establish yourself that you can provide value to them by showing them that, hey, typically most new home builders, they're focused on building homes. They're focused on like land and development and financing and all this stuff that like goes on in there. The last thing they typically want to focus on is marketing an individual listing. And so if you can show them how you're going to market that listing better than, you know, they will themselves, and how, you know, like in my case, I got a deal from a Meritage Homes where they gave me 3 listings. They gave it to me at 2% each one, but I was fine because it was 3 listings. It was easy to do. They're all in the same community. I went out there one day, set up all the, you know, photos, videos, everything all in one shot. It was awesome. But the person called me because it was a closeout community. They were having trouble with these listings. And now at this point, we've already sold one, and we got one that's likely to go under contract this weekend. The person's coming back out to write up the contract. So out of those 3, and that's only been in the last 4 weeks. And so you got to show, though, how your marketing is going to be on point, because that's really the only thing why a developer or a builder would want to hire you versus just using what they have, unless you just got a really good relationship or some kind of like, you know, deal with that person from the past. And so that's the way that you could leverage it. You know, I would say, you know, start with the low hanging fruit, which is, you know, if you're a newer agent, you want to go out and start that side of your business, just go out there and start talking to new home salespeople. And, you know, you never know where that will go for you. Build relationships, show them some value, you know, have maybe a little write-up or a page that shows like what your differentiators are. And, you know, explain that to the new home salesperson, but then follow up. It's just like anything. You got to treat that part of it like a whole separate business. You got to follow up with those new home people, keep going out, you know, frequently, and you will get the referrals. They are a great source of business. I've gotten a lot of deals from new home builders. But, you know, again, my background was new home sales. So I knew a lot already coming into general real estate. I knew a lot of new home builders, but I stay in touch with a lot of them as well. But if you're not already there, that's what you got to be doing. And if you do get the chance where you get to sit in front of like the person who makes all the decisions, the sales manager or whatever it might be, you know, maybe it's the owner of a small, you know, home building group or something like that. That's where you really got to leverage and show them how your marketing is going to benefit their business and why it's worth, you know, them paying you in addition to all the other stuff they're paying, to get that house sold. So I hope that helps.
Hey, Kyle, let me just wrap up that. Just want to reiterate something that you said. I think that's really important. So if you have not worked new construction, you know, for a significant part of your experience as a realtor, again, the simplest thing you can do, like Kyle said, is you can literally drive out to these subdivisions and meet the salespeople at the builder's office and just get to know them, build relationships, learn more about what they have for sale, just build a connection there, which is going to lead you to the opportunities of selling their homes, which is then going to connect you up the ladder to the management, the leadership. And if they're an independent builder, you do the same thing. You're just working with them, just doing as much as you can in and around their communities. Like that's the simple process. If you have nothing else to do, if you don't have a lot of leads and a lot of prospecting and a lot of sales clients, you could and should easily be spending days a week out at these communities because they are bored. They need help. They're sitting there. They're hungry. They need Starbucks. Like there's a lot of things you can be doing to build those relationships right away. And most agents, almost every agent that has ever thought of attacking new construction has dropped off a card or two, but very few agents actually build significant relationships with these salespeople and help them out and reciprocate and add lots of value. So that's a very simple strategy. I do want to hit Ian's question real quick because I think this is really important and something that's worked for me personally quite a bit. And I see a lot of the most successful agents that are selling new homes doing the following 3 things from a marketing standpoint. Number 1, you need to know the numbers and what it costs to buy a new home very well. And you need to be able to compare it to buying a pre-owned home in this market. What I mean by that, for example, is what the payment would be on a brand new house as compared to the payments on pre-owned homes. And you need to be able to compare brand new houses to rent. So you need to know your numbers really well. That's going to attract buyers online like Ian was suggesting. So for example, imagine a Facebook post that says, hey, drop a yes in the comments if your rent is $1,500 or more. In most markets, $1,500 could buy you a low-cost pre-owned home or $2,000 or more. So just being able to know your numbers and payments and compare that, that's really powerful, valuable. Understanding the builder's incentives and deals, right? Who wouldn't want $5,000 worth of appliances, or who wouldn't want all their closing costs paid, or who wouldn't want, you know, XYZ incentive? And these builders have them. And most consumers just don't know about them because, like Kyle said, most of the builders are not doing a good job of marketing online to their target customers that are the buyers, right? And then the last one, and this one's pretty cool, like there's a huge opportunity to become the branded new home expert. If you're spending all this time in these communities and you're constantly going live and talking to the salespeople and capturing footage and video of all these new homes, you're going to quickly establish yourself amongst your audience, like Jason Phipps was talking about earlier, as this expert in this arena. And that becomes really, really powerful for attracting people to reach out to you because they know that you know the new home process. And here's why there's a big opportunity, because unlike Realtor.com and Zillow.com, it's easy for the average buyer consumer to research pre-owned homes. It's not really easy to research new builds. Like if you get out there and you just start Googling around for communities and prices and incentives and floor plans, it's super cumbersome for the average buyer. It's not simple. They literally have to typically research 2, 3, 4 times more, longer. They have to research a lot, and then they have to drive out there to communities to find this stuff out. So they just don't know what's out there. And if you become that expert and you do know what's out there and you can take one phone call and tell them everything that's going on in areas, they're going to be much more inclined to meet you on a weekend and go drive around to these communities. And then back to establishing credibility, and why this is so powerful for newer agents is, even if you don't have a lot of experience, but you know all these builder sales reps, when you walk into a community and they're like, "Hey, Ian, so good to see you, man," because you were just there yesterday and brought them a Starbucks. Now you look like a rock star in front of your buyer clients. Like, "Oh man, Ian's so well connected. He knows everybody. I bet he's going to get me the best deal possible." And you establish credibility just because of the hard work you've done from a networking perspective and kind of getting that market expertise with construction. So it's a great avenue.
Hey, Jason, real quick, man, Curtis, dude, that was huge. Like, I loved that part about, the credibility. And I think that's huge, because I've definitely taken clients and you look like a rock star, they trust you even more. But then, yeah, just like you also said, a lot of them just don't even know too, that you can get paid on new construction. Like they think like, that's like a whole separate thing than buying real estate. So like you going out and just explaining that you can help people with new home construction is probably going to blow some of the people's minds in your sphere of influence, or people that watch you that think that you might not even get to be able to, help them with that because they already deal with other salespeople. You wouldn't believe the amount of people that don't think that you as a realtor can get paid on new construction. So that's a huge misconception, that if you start going out and just explaining that, hey, here's new construction, they're going to think, oh, well, I guess, maybe I should reach out to him about new construction.
Most consumers think salespeople are realtors. They're wrong. Yep. The salespeople work for the builders, and their job is to sell the heck out of that house with no care or concern for the consumer. That's why they need our protection.
Right. So yeah, so that's a good point. But I wanted to real quick, I know it's 11, we're going to wrap up, but Jason, if you're on this thing, I know that you're a huge builder guy, man. If you got another nugget that we missed that you want to drop, I know you offered it up for people to reach out, but did we miss anything?
Real quick, in our area, it's all about the land. Whoever controls the land controls the builders. So you can also go to planning, go to your city planning meetings. And you can just sit there and start shaking hands with people that actually go there. And that's how you'll get in. You'll find out really quick. You'll meet developers, and you'll actually go to the very beginning of the process. And I found if you meet the developer first, then you're going to meet multiple builders who want that land. So try that approach as well. Go to the city planning meetings, go to the health department when they're planning the septic systems. Just look on your local government website, and they'll have a list of all the different kind of meetings that are going on, and just sit in them. They're boring, they're long, but you can shake hands and meet really good people, and that's kind of how you grow in our area anyways.
Bam. And that's why this is the agent mastermind, man. That's huge. Thank you, Jason. I didn't even think of that angle, man. That's awesome. I love it, guys. Well, cool. Well, hopefully we covered that topic pretty well. If you've got any questions, like Jason said, you kind of know, now a couple of different people on this call's experience level, feel free to reach out, to any or all of us. We got Ian, we got Jason, we got Curtis that talked on this call. So anything we can ever do to help you guys, let us know. But do we miss anything else, Curtis?
No, that's awesome, guys. A couple things that I think we're going to try and get to. Number one, make sure when you hear somebody talk on this call and you like what they have to say, you go follow them on Facebook, please, and friend them on other social platforms, because that's a big part of your research as an agent, is watching what Ian Flanagan's doing and Russ Keith is doing and Kyle and Jason. You got to watch and learn and mimic and model. This business is a copycat business. So we're not giving you ideas so you can go try to recreate it and figure out. We're giving you ideas verbatim so you can copy and be successful and build your business. So go do that. And then number two, I just dropped a link out in the chat, guys. That is a copy and paste of a Google Doc of all the notes that I just took. So this might get tighter over time, but I'm going to give Kyle that link and he can put it in the comments of the repost of this video. And I'm going to try and pull notes as we go so you guys can have a tangible takeaway. You just got to open that. Don't touch it. Just download a PDF or something once you do that. And that'll be your notes recap of this call.
And real quick, guys, before we close this out, was there any topics we didn't cover that maybe we can put in a little list that we can hit on for next week? What was the one, Curtis, that you'd said it was actually a carryover from last week?
We didn't cover database. We didn't cover database.
All right, so we are going to cover your database next week, guys. So anybody that wants to find out about database and how to organize them, what the categories, how often you should kind of look at them and what you should be doing with them, then be on next week. All things database. That's like my baby. I love databases, so that'll be a fun one. But databases. What else do we miss anything else? Maybe people should drop their social media link in the comments.
We covered construction and listing presentations today, so that was good stuff. Those were two of the 4 big topics that were requested. The other topic that was requested that we did not cover, give me 1 minute. Let me get back to the top of it.
And if y'all want a topic for next week, put it in right now so we have some stuff to start with for next week. Yep. I'm dropping my social media.
One of the best calls in 15 years in the business. Thanks, Linda. That's appreciated. If you like it, keep coming, contribute, and bring people to the call. This is open to agents across the country from any real estate brokerage, regardless of where they're at, regardless of their experience level. I mean, we just want to help each other be more successful and continue to elevate this profession.
I learn when I'm on these calls. That's why
this was good stuff. I love it too. It gets my week kicked off and gets me fired up. I really love it.
Cool. There we go. All right, guys. Well, good stuff. If anybody wants to drop their stuff in there. All right, Jerome, I'm going to go check you out, man. If y'all need anything, let us know. But thanks everybody for attending today, and we'll see you guys next Monday.
See you later.